Let's add a bit of raised detail to our lure. I'll demo a gill plate, and we'll need to sketch its shape, of course, but equally important is that the shape follow the contours of the outside of the bait. And for that, we'll make a slightly oversized copy and perform some Boolean operations. Here I have a copy of the file that we left off with in the last video where we added this diving lip. And the first thing I'm going to do is just a little bit of cleanup. So I'm going to delete this placement sketch that we're not using. I'm going to change the dimensions of this lip, like I showed you in that video, to something a little bit more realistic. So I'll go 10, 15, and 12. And then I'm going to name this diving lip and fuse it with the main lure. Let's rename this now to bait. So I'm going to need to set a dimension for how far these details, this gill plate, protrudes from the bait. And I'm going to need to refer to that dimension several times. So I'm going to go up to my Varset and double click on it and add a property here called raised detail height. I'm going to go with 0.75 millimeters. That seems to work well. 0.5 millimeter works well. Now let's hide our bait, bring back our side profile. It's already visible. Great. And let's create a new sketch on the YZ plane. Here, I'll bring in the external geometry of the top of our lure. And then I'll create a simple 3-point B-spline to match that shape. Set a distance between the 2 points, and I'll use this expression editor here to choose raised detail height. And I'll do that again, the back of the lure. Now, because our lure is a very simple circular shape, we can just perform a revolve. So I'm going to close the sketch with some straight lines coming from that B-spline down to the origin, and the origin over here on the axis, and then connect up to our B-spline. I'll make this line vertical, and I'll select this point from our side profile and the line and make a coincidence constraint. Now you can't dimension every B-spline perfectly this way to have an even gap, but this one's simple enough that we can. So let's draw a construction line between the two B-splines, the one we're drawing and our reference. Then I will set a distance between it and the front of the lure. And let's go with 32 so that it's about halfway. This was a 75 millimeter lure. And then I'll set the dimension of this line to be the same as everything else, right? Varset.raised detail height. And I got an over constraint here. Let me see what happened. I got an accidental dimension here. It looks like, yep, I got that dimension. I can delete it. Okay, now you can see that this is set to be the 0.75, and so is the front and so is the back, but because we can move this control point around, we're not fully constrained. So to fix that on this simple B-spline, what I'm going to do is actually move this 32 back about a third of the way from the front. I'll drop another construction line near the back, go back to the dimension tool and select this point and this point and set them to 25. There we go. And because this is a line, I don't have to type that expression in again. I can select the first line and select our new line and use an equal constraint. And now you see we're fully constrained, and that is because this is a simple B-spline. Let's go ahead and close out of the sketch. Okay, let's rename our sketch, and I will call this raised detail revolve sketch. And we will perform a revolve on it, and I will select the reference and I'll select this line. We could also use these axis indicators here, but I just find it easier to select where I want to revolve from. I'll rename that. And now we've created our slightly oversized lure, or our slightly oversized profile. So if I bring the bait back, you can see that it's a little bit bigger, 0.75 millimeters to be exact, than the existing bait. And that's perfect. Let's create another sketch, but I don't want anything selected. So I'll hit cancel, and I'll just click on the model till nothing is selected in the tree view. Create a sketch on the YZ plane, and let's go back to the model and bring our bait back visible. Now we can see our eye here, and that's important because that's going to help us place our gill plate. But if we start to draw, we're actually going to be drawing back here on the plane behind this bait. So what we can do is come up here, and there is an icon called View Section. And that'll cut that plane out. So you can see some of the internal geometry here, but all I really cared about was, the outer lure shape and the eye. So let's draw a B-spline here. And this one, I'm not even going to bother to constrain. I'm just going to sort of freehand a shape and just make it something that looks pleasing to me. So hide my constraints and then just kind of move this thing around. So I'd like it to be more like this. That's good enough for me, or at least good enough for this demo. Let's go ahead and close out of here. I'll rename this sketch to gill plate. Something very strange has happened to my UI here. Let's see if hiding, and there we go. Nope. Let's go ahead and save the file, close out a FreeCAD, and bring it back up. This happens from time to time. Okay, I've restarted FreeCAD and it looks better. We have this gill plate and we want to extrude it. And the distance kind of doesn't matter and kind of does. And let me explain what I mean by that. Let's rename this extrude to gill plate. And let's bring back the raise detail revolve. Our extrude for our gill plate is larger than our raise detail revolve, and that's exactly what we want. If this was a little bit smaller, let's drop this a millimeter or two and see what happens. Yeah, it will disappear there and it's not going to follow you're going to have a flat spot. So let's go back and bump it up. Oops, bump it up to anything really, 15. And now we're going to perform a Boolean operation called an intersection. We're going to select both of these items, and it doesn't matter which order you select them in, and come up here on the menu to the intersection tool. That's going to create an object called a common. So if we hide the bait, you can see what we've done here is we've made a common between that outer larger bait and that gill plate sketch. Now, in our particular geometry here, there's nothing in this bait behind that gill plate that we have to worry about. But if you had a detail that came back around here and was over this rigging hole, you might actually cause yourself some problems. So although we don't have to do it for this bait, I'm going to show you how to fix that. And it's real simple. You just take your common here and you take your original lure, your loft, your curved array, your sweep, whatever you've done, and you just cut it out. And when you do that, let me hide the bait again, you're getting just this outer detail section. So there's only one more thing to do, and that's for us to take this gill plate and mirror it across that YZ plane so that it shows up on both sides of our bait. That's all there is to that. I hope this inspires you to make some really cool designs on top of your bait. Once you get past the functional part and the bait works the way you want. And that will hopefully help you trick really cool fish like this one right here.